The city lights were blurring together into a messy yellow smear as Keanu walked down the busy street. It had been a very long day. He wasn't walking with the quick, energetic stride people saw in his action movies. In fact, he was shuffling just a little bit. His shoulders were slumped forward, and his eyes were looking at the pavement more than the skyline. He had just spent 14 hours on a movie set, pretending to be someone else, riding motorcycles and jumping off buildings for the camera. Now that the director had yelled, "Cut!" his body was reminding him that he wasn't 25 anymore. Everything hurt. His back ached, his feet were sore, and all he wanted in the entire world was a quiet place to sit for 10 minutes. He was still wearing his costume from the film. It was a rugged look, distressed jeans that were fraying at the hems, a heavy gray jacket that had seen better days, and a pair of black boots that were covered in fake dust and dirt. He looked rough. To anyone who didn't know better, he looked like a guy who had maybe slept outside last night. But that was the irony of it all. The place he was walking toward wasn't a shelter or a cheap diner. It was the Argent, one of the most expensive and exclusive hotels in the city. It was a place where the rooms cost thousands of dollars a night, and the lobby smelled like vanilla and expensive flowers. It was also a place that Keanu partly owned. He didn't think about his status as he approached the entrance. He didn't think about being a celebrity or a business owner. He just thought about being a tired human being who needed coffee. He reached the front of the building. There were no heavy wooden doors to push open, just a sleek modern glass entryway that slid smoothly to the side as he got close. The noise of the street faded instantly, replaced by the soft hum of classical music and the hushed tones of people talking about money and vacations. Keanu kept his head down. He pulled the collar of his jacket up a bit higher, trying to hide his face. He wasn't trying to be rude. He just didn't have the energy to smile for a stranger's phone camera right now. He just wanted to get to the lounge area, order a simple black coffee, and disappear into a soft armchair for a little while. He walked past the giant marble reception desk. The staff there knew him well, but tonight the desk was crowded with guests checking in. Keanu slipped by unnoticed, moving like a ghost. He headed toward a roped-off area that led to the VIP lounge. This was a quieter spot, usually reserved for guests staying in the suites, but Keanu often went there when he needed to think. He stepped toward the velvet rope, intending to duck under it and find his corner spot. "Excuse me, sir." The voice was loud and firm. It cut through the soft jazz music like a knife. Keanu stopped walking. He paused for a second, thinking the voice was talking to someone behind him. He looked over his shoulder, but the hallway was empty. He turned back around and saw a tall man in a tight security uniform stepping into his path. This was a new guard. He had a shiny badge, a radio on his shoulder, and a very serious look on his face. He looked like a man who took his job very seriously and wanted everyone to know it. Keanu blinked slowly, trying to process the interruption. He looked at the guard, his face calm but confused. "Yeah?" Keanu asked softly. His voice was raspy from yelling lines all day. The guard crossed his arms over his chest, making himself look even bigger. "This area is for registered guests only," the guard said. He didn't say it with a smile. He said it like he was reading a rule book, his eyes scanning Keanu's messy clothes with a look of judgment. "You can't be here." Keanu looked down at his own clothes. He saw the rips in the jeans and the dirt on the boots. He realized suddenly that he looked like a mess. A small, tired smile touched the corner of his mouth. He understood the mistake. He didn't get angry. He didn't say, "Do you know who I am?" Instead, he just tried to explain himself in the simplest way possible. "I know," Keanu said gently, waving a hand toward the lounge. "I was just going to grab a coffee really quick. I won't stay long." The guard shook his head. He took a step closer, invading Keanu's personal space just enough to be intimidating. "I'm sorry, but that's not how it works. This isn't a public coffee shop. You have to have a room key to be in this section." The guard's radio crackled with static, but he ignored it, keeping his eyes locked on Keanu. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave, sir. You're disturbing the atmosphere for our actual guests." Keanu stood there for a moment. He could feel the eyes of a few well-dressed people nearby turning to look. They were whispering. He saw a woman in a sparkling dress pull her purse closer to her side, looking at him with a mixture of pity and suspicion. It was a strange feeling. He owned a piece of this floor, literally owned the carpet they were standing on, but right now, he was just a guy in dirty clothes who wasn't welcome. He looked at the guard. The guard was just doing his job, protecting the hotel from people who looked like they didn't belong. Keanu respected that. He didn't want to be the guy who made a scene. He didn't want to be the celebrity who threw a tantrum because someone didn't recognize him. That felt small to him. It felt pointless. "Okay," Keanu said simply. He nodded his head once, a gesture of surrender. "No problem, I understand." He didn't argue. He didn't ask for a manager. He just turned around and started walking back the way he came. The guard watched him closely, making sure he actually left, following a few steps behind until Keanu passed the marble desk and headed toward the main exit. Keanu felt a weird mix of emotions as he walked toward the glass doors. Part of him wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. Here he was, a man who could buy almost anything in the world, being escorted out of a building he helped pay for because he looked too poor. But mostly, he just felt tired. The adrenaline from the movie set had worn off completely now, leaving him feeling heavy. He reached the front of the lobby. The automatic glass sensors saw him coming and the doors slid open smoothly. The cool night air rushed in to meet him, smelling of car exhaust and cold pavement. It wasn't the sweet vanilla smell of the hotel, but it was real. Keanu stepped out onto the sidewalk. The doors slid shut behind him, sealing him off from the warmth and the luxury. He stood there for a minute, taking a deep breath. He looked at his reflection in the dark glass of the hotel window. He looked rough. He looked tired. He didn't look like a movie star. He just looked like a man who needed a break. He shoved his hands into the pockets of his tattered jacket and hunched his shoulders against the chill of the evening. He had been kicked out, but strangely, he didn't feel angry at the guard. He just felt a little bit sad that the world was so judged by appearances, but he wasn't going to let it ruin his night. He turned away from the bright lights of the hotel lobby and looked down the dark street. There was a bench a little way down, and beyond that, the city was still moving, still alive. He wasn't sure where he was going to go now, but he knew he couldn't stay here. He started walking, his boots making a soft, scuffing sound on the concrete. He had no idea that in just a few minutes, this small, embarrassing moment would turn into something that would shock everyone watching, including the guard who had just thrown him out. But for now, he was just a man walking alone, looking for a place where he was allowed to simply exist. The automatic glass doors slid shut behind him, sealing off the soft music and the smell of vanilla. Out here on the sidewalk, the world was loud and real. Cars zoomed by on the street, their tires humming against the asphalt, and the air smelled of exhaust fumes and cold concrete. Keanu stood there for a moment, just letting the city wash over him. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the crisp night air. It wasn't the luxurious filtered air of the hotel lobby, but it felt better. It felt honest. He shoved his hands deeper into the pockets of his tattered jacket and started walking away from the bright lights of the entrance. He didn't have a destination in mind. He just knew he couldn't stand there looking at the building he wasn't allowed to enter. His boots scuffed lightly against the pavement as he walked, the rhythm soothing him a little. The rejection still stung, not because of pride, but because of the coldness of it. Being judged by a piece of fabric or the scuff on a shoe was a strange feeling. It made him feel invisible. A few yards down the street, the glow of a street lamp illuminated a lonely concrete bench. Under the light, sitting hunched over with her elbows on her knees, was a young woman. She looked like she was around 20 years old. She was wearing a simple hoodie and jeans, and beside her on the bench sat a large tray covered in plastic wrap. Under the plastic, Keanu could see stacks of homemade chocolate chip cookies. She wasn't looking at the people passing by. She was staring at the ground, her body shaking slightly. As Keanu got closer, he realized she was crying. She wasn't making a scene or sobbing loudly. It was the quiet, defeated kind of crying that hurts even more to watch. She was wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie, trying to hide her face from the pedestrians who were walking past without even glancing at her. Keanu slowed his pace. He saw the cardboard sign leaning against her backpack. It was written in colorful markers, the letters big and hopeful. Homemade cookies, $5 a box. Helping pay for nursing school. He stopped walking. He knew that feeling all too well, the feeling of doing everything you could and still feeling like it wasn't enough. He looked at the hotel behind him, a place where people spent more money on one night than this girl probably needed for a whole semester of books. He looked back at the girl. He didn't see a stranger. He just saw another human being who was having a really hard night. He walked over to the bench. He didn't approach her like a celebrity or a savior. He approached her like a quiet neighbor. He sat down on the other end of the bench, leaving a respectful amount of space between them. He didn't say anything at first. He just sat there, looking out at the traffic, letting her know she wasn't alone, but giving her the room to compose herself. The girl jumped a little when she felt the bench dip under his weight. She quickly scrubbed at her face, trying to erase the evidence of her tears, and turned to look at him. She saw a tired man in dirty, ripped clothes and messy hair. Her expression changed from embarrassment to a soft, immediate empathy. She didn't see a movie star. She saw someone who looked just as lost as she felt. "Rough night?" she asked quietly. Her voice was thick with tears, but she was trying to be kind. She assumed he was homeless or down on his luck, and her first instinct wasn't to judge him, but to worry about him. Keanu looked at her and offered a tired, lopsided smile. "You could say that," he said softly. "Yeah, long day," she nodded understandingly. "I know the feeling," she said. She gestured to the tray of cookies. "I've been out here for 4 hours. I haven't sold a single box. Everyone is in too much of a hurry to stop." She let out a sad little laugh. "I think I might have chosen the wrong spot." Keanu leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees, mimicking her posture. It made him feel less like a star and more like a regular guy having a chat. "Nursing school?" he asked, nodding toward the sign. She looked down at the sign and then back at him, her eyes lighting up a little bit despite the tears. "Yeah, I start next month. I want to be a pediatric nurse. I love kids and I want to help them feel better when they're scared." Her voice dropped again. "But the books are so expensive, and my tuition. I'm short about $2,000. I thought if I worked hard and sold these, I could make a dent in it. But nobody wants them." She looked at Keanu's clothes again, really seeing the wear and tear. Her heart went out to him. She reached over and lifted the plastic wrap from the tray. "Here," she said softly. She picked out a big, warm cookie and held it out to him. "You look like you need this more than I need $5 right now." "It's on the house." Keanu looked at the cookie, and then he looked at her face. She was giving him the only thing she had to offer, even though she was the one who needed the help. In the grand hotel behind them, people were buying $1,000 bottles of wine without blinking, but here on the cold bench. This girl was giving away her livelihood to a stranger because she thought he was hungry. He didn't want to take it for free. He reached for his wallet, but she shook her head firmly. "No," she said. "Please take it. My grandma made them. They're really good. It might make your night a little bit better." Keanu slowly reached out and took the cookie. It was still slightly warm from the day's heat. "Thank you," he said. He meant it. He took a bite. It was sweet and rich, filled with chocolate chunks. It tasted like real food made with real care. "It's delicious," he said honestly. "Your grandmother is a good cook." The girl smiled, and for the first time she didn't look like she was about to cry. "She is. She's the one who pushed me to go to nursing school. She says the world needs more healers." "She's right," Keanu said, chewing slowly. He swallowed and looked at her with a serious, gentle expression. "Nurses are the real heroes, you know. They do the hard work. When things get bad, it's the nurses who are there. You're going to be great at it." The girl looked at him, surprised by the depth in his voice. She wasn't used to strangers talking to her like this. "You think so?" "I know so," Keanu said. "It takes a special kind of person to care that much. You're out here in the cold, working hard, trying to help people. That tells me everything I need to know about you." He shifted on the bench, turning his body slightly toward her. "Don't give up. Okay, 4 hours feels like a long time, but it's just 4 hours. You have a whole life ahead of you to help kids. Don't let a slow night on the sidewalk make you doubt your dream." She looked down at her hands, taking in his words. It was strange, getting advice from a man who looked like he had lost everything, yet he seemed to possess more peace than anyone she had met inside the hotel nearby. "I won't," she whispered. "Thanks, I really needed to hear that." Keanu finished the cookie and brushed the crumbs off his hands. He felt a little warmer now. The coldness of the hotel eviction was fading away, replaced by the warmth of this small connection. He wasn't the rich actor who owned the building anymore, and he wasn't the bum the guard thought he was. He was just a man, sharing a bench with a future nurse. He looked at the empty spot on the tray where the cookie used to be. He looked at the girl, who was sitting up a little straighter now, her eyes dry. He knew he couldn't just walk away and leave her here feeling defeated. Not after she had been kind to him when no one else was. He reached into his pocket, his fingers brushing against his wallet. He knew what he was going to do, but he wanted to do it right. He didn't want it to be a handout. He wanted it to be an investment in a future hero. You know, Keanu said, his voice casual but steady, I was actually looking for a snack. I think I might need more than just one. The young woman on the bench looked at Keanu with wide, uncertain eyes when he reached for his wallet. She started to wave her hands, shaking her head frantically. No, really, you don't have to do that, she stammered, looking at his worn-out jacket again. You look like you need the money more than I do. Please, keep it. I just wanted you to have a cookie. Keanu didn't pull the wallet out all the way. He just paused, looking at her with a softness that made her stop talking. I'm doing okay, he said gently. Really, and I believe in what you're doing. Nursing school is important. Let me help. Before she could argue anymore, he took out the stack of bills he had in his pocket. It was a thick wad, mostly hundreds and fifties, leftover from cash he had taken out for tips on the movie set earlier in the week. He didn't count it. He didn't peel off a 20 or a 50. He just held the whole stack out to her. Take it, he said. For the books and for the tuition, tell your grandmother I said thank you. The girl stared at the money, then up at him. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was frozen in disbelief. It looked like more money than she had ever held in her life. She thought he was making a mistake, or maybe it wasn't real money, but the look in his eyes was so serious and so kind that she knew it was real. Slowly, trembling, she reached out and took the cash. Her hands were shaking so hard that the bills rustled loudly in the quiet night air. I don't know what to say, she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes again, but this time they were different. They weren't tears of sadness. Thank you so much. I won't let you down. I promise. You won't, Keanu said, standing up from the bench. Now go home, it's getting cold. She nodded, clutching the money to her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. She gathered her backpack and her empty tray, still looking back at him as if he might disappear. Keanu gave her a small salute and a nod, watching her hurry away toward the bus stop. Once she was safe, he turned back to the hotel entrance, feeling a little lighter than he had 10 minutes ago. Meanwhile, inside the hotel, the atmosphere in the lobby was shifting. The elevator doors at the back of the hall slid open with a soft chime, and the hotel manager stepped out. She was a woman in her 50s, wearing a sharp gray suit and walking with the confident stride of someone who had been running the place for decades. She had just finished a meeting in the corporate offices upstairs and was looking forward to checking the guest book before heading home herself. As she walked toward the front desk, she noticed the new security guard standing near the entrance. He was standing a little taller than usual, looking very pleased with himself. He smoothed his uniform and gave a stiff nod to the manager as she approached. Good evening, ma'am, the guard said, his voice full of pride. Just wanted to let you know I handled a situation out here a few minutes ago. Everything is secure now. The manager raised an eyebrow, adjusting her glasses. A situation. We didn't get any radio calls. It was minor, the guard explained, gesturing toward the glass doors. There was a man loitering near the VIP lounge, looked pretty rough, dirty clothes, unshaven. I think he might have been homeless looking for a warm place to sleep or trying to scam guests for money. He tried to duck under the rope, but I stopped him. The manager smiled politely. Well, good work. Safety is our priority. Oh, I was firm with him, the guard continued, enjoying the moment. He tried to make up a story about just wanting coffee, but I know the type. I told him to leave. He didn't put up a fight, just walked out. Kept the lounge clear for the actual guests, you know? The manager's smile froze on her face. A cold knot suddenly formed in her stomach. A man, she asked slowly. Rough clothes, dark jacket, maybe a bit tired looking. That's the one, the guard nodded. Looked like he hadn't slept in days. Definitely not the type we want in the VIP section. The manager felt the blood drain from her face. She knew exactly who that was. She knew the specific tired look the guard was describing. She knew about the long days on set and the habit of wearing costumes home. It wasn't a homeless man, it was Keanu. Her heart skipped a beat and then began to pound against her ribs. Panic started to rise in her chest. Keanu wasn't just a celebrity guest, he was a part owner. He was the man who signed the paychecks. He was also the kindest, most private person she knew, and he had just been humiliated and thrown out of his own building by a new hire who didn't know any better. Did he say anything? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Just mumbled something about understanding, the guard said, shrugging. He left peacefully enough. Like I said, just doing my job protecting the brand. The manager didn't respond. She turned sharply on her heel and marched toward the glass entryway. Her mind was racing with terrible thoughts. She imagined Keanu never coming back. She imagined him selling his share of the hotel. She imagined the headlines, "Movie star abused by own security." This was a disaster. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a violation of everything the hotel was supposed to stand for. She reached the glass doors and stopped, placing her hand on the cool frame. She looked out onto the street, expecting to see him getting into a taxi, maybe angry, maybe just leaving forever. She needed to catch him. She needed to apologize. She needed to fix this before it was too late. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" the guard asked, following her. He was confused by her sudden change in mood. He didn't understand why she looked so terrified. The manager didn't answer him. She was too busy scanning the sidewalk. The street was busy with cars and people walking by, but she couldn't see Keanu at first. Then her eyes caught movement near a bench down the block. "There," she whispered, pointing. She saw him. He wasn't leaving. He wasn't hailing a cab. He was sitting on a concrete bench, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. The manager squinted, trying to see what he was doing. She expected him to be on his phone, maybe calling his lawyer or his assistant to complain about the treatment he had received. But he wasn't on his phone. He was just sitting there. And he wasn't alone. There was a young woman sitting next to him, and he was, smiling. The manager couldn't believe her eyes. Instead of storming off or being angry, the man they had just thrown out was sitting on a cold bench in the dark, laughing with a stranger. She watched as he reached into his pocket. She expected him to pull out a phone, but instead he pulled out his wallet. "What is he doing?" the guard mumbled behind her, confused. The manager leaned closer to the glass, her breath fogging it up slightly. She saw Keanu hand a thick stack of cash to the young woman. The girl looked shocked, covering her mouth with her hands. Keanu patted her on the shoulder, said something that made her smile through her tears, and then watched her walk away. The manager felt her knees go weak. She had been terrified that Keanu was going to be furious. She was ready to beg for forgiveness. But seeing this, seeing him get kicked out of a luxury hotel and immediately turn around to help a stranger on the street, it shocked her more than any angry outburst ever could. She looked back at the guard, whose face had gone pale as he finally pieced it together. He realized that the rough man he had kicked out was the same man in the photos hanging in the back office hall, the man who owned the floor they were standing on. "We have to go out there," the manager said, her voice urgent but filled with a strange new emotion, not just fear but awe. "Right now, before he leaves." She didn't wait for the guard. She pushed the button to open the doors, her heart pounding harder than ever, but for a completely different reason. She wasn't going out to face an angry boss. She was going out to witness whatever kind of magic was happening on that bench. The cool night air felt heavy as the woman in the gray suit and the tall security guard stepped out of the hotel. The glass doors slid shut behind them with a soft hiss, cutting off the safety and the quiet luxury of the lobby. Out here, the city noise rushed back in, the honking of horns, the distant wail of a siren, and the murmur of people walking past. The manager walked quickly, her heels clicking sharply on the concrete sidewalk. She was followed closely by the guard, who had lost all of his previous confidence. He was walking stiffly, his face pale under the streetlights. He kept looking at the manager's back, terrified of what was about to happen. It had slowly dawned on him exactly who he had kicked out. The rough-looking man in the dirty jacket wasn't a random person off the street. It was the man whose face was on the posters in the hotel lobby. It was the man who owned the place. As they got closer to the bench, the manager slowed down. She could see Keanu clearly now. He was sitting alone, watching the traffic lights change colors down the street. He looked small and humble against the backdrop of the giant city buildings. He didn't look like a powerful billionaire. He just looked like a man taking a breather. The guard stopped a few feet away, seemingly unable to move his legs. He was sweating despite the cold wind. He thought about his wife, his kids, and the rent he had to pay. He was convinced he was about to be fired on the spot. He had messed up in the worst way possible, insulting the owner and treating him like trash. The manager took a deep breath and walked the last few steps alone. She stopped right in front of the bench. "Mr. Reeves," she said softly. Her voice was shaking a little bit. Keanu turned his head. He wasn't startled. He just looked up at her, his eyes calm and tired. He didn't look angry. He didn't look like he was plotting revenge. He just looked like he was waiting for a friend. He saw the fear in her face and the terror in the guard's eyes standing a few steps back. "Hi," Keanu said quietly. He nodded at her. He didn't stand up right away. He just sat there, comfortable on the hard concrete bench. The manager twisted her hands together nervously. I saw what happened on the cameras, and I just saw you from inside. I am so sorry. This is entirely our fault. There is no excuse for how you were treated." She was speaking fast, trying to get all the words out before he could yell at her. "Please let us make this right. Come back inside. We will clear the lounge. We will get you anything you want." Keanu looked at her, and then he looked past her at the guard. The guard looked like he wanted the ground to open up and swallow him. Keanu stood up slowly. He brushed off the seat of his pants. He was a bit taller than the manager, but he didn't use his height to be intimidating. He slumped his shoulders slightly, keeping himself on the same level as her. "It's okay," Keanu said. His voice was low and raspy. "Really, it's okay." "It is not okay," the manager insisted, tears actually welling up in her eyes because she felt so bad. "He humiliated you, that guard. He is new. He didn't recognize you, but that is no excuse. He will be disciplined, I promise you that." The guard flinched at the word disciplined. He took a step forward, his voice trembling. "Sir, I am so sorry. I thought you were. I didn't know. I was just trying to do my job. I thought I was protecting the hotel." He stopped, unable to finish. He looked down at his shoes. Keanu looked at the guard for a long moment. The air was silent. The manager held her breath, waiting for Keanu to demand the guard's firing. That is what most people in his position would do. That is what most powerful people would do when they were disrespected. But Keanu just sighed. He reached out and patted the guard on the shoulder. The guard flinched at the touch, expecting it to be aggressive, but it was gentle. "You were doing your job," Keanu said. "You saw someone who looked like they didn't belong and you stepped in. You were trying to keep the place safe. I don't blame you for that. I look pretty rough tonight." He laughed a little, a self-deprecating sound. "I probably shouldn't be walking around looking like this anyway." The guard looked up, shocked. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "But I threw you out. You own the hotel." "I do," Keanu admitted. "But owning a place doesn't mean I own the people in it. You were being a security guard. You were doing what you thought was right." "No hard feelings." The manager stared at him. She had worked in the luxury hotel business for 30 years. She had dealt with princes, CEOs, and movie stars. She had seen people throw fits over the wrong temperature of water or the wrong color of a pillow. Never in her life had she seen someone handle such a public insult with so much grace. "We still want to make it up to you," the manager said, her voice softer now. "Please come inside. Let us get you a proper coffee or dinner, anything." Keanu shook his head slowly. "Actually, I'm okay out here. It's nice to get some air." He looked down the street, in the direction the young woman with the cookies had gone. "Besides, I think I got what I needed out here anyway." The manager followed his gaze. She remembered seeing him hand the money to the girl. She remembered the smile on his face. She said quietly, "We saw you give that girl money. Was she a friend of yours?" Keanu looked back at her and smiled. It was a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "No. I never met her before tonight. She was just sitting here crying because she couldn't sell her cookies to pay for nursing school." The guard and the manager exchanged a glance. They were both stunned. "She saw me sitting here," Keanu continued, "and she thought I was the one who needed help. She gave me a cookie for free. She was kind to me when no one else inside was," he shrugged. "So I helped her out. She's going to be a nurse. She's going to help people. That matters more than my coffee." The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't an awkward silence anymore. It was a respectful silence. The tall guard, who had been ready to fight a vagrant 10 minutes ago, now felt smaller than he ever had in his life. This man, who had every right to be angry and arrogant, had spent his time on the sidewalk helping a stranger and forgiving the guard who insulted him. "I should have bought the rest of the cookies, though," Keanu said suddenly, looking at the empty space on the bench where the tray had been. "She only had a few left." "I hope she sells them." The guard swallowed hard. He felt a lump in his throat. He realized he had been judging a book by its cover all night. He judged the girl as a nuisance, and he judged Keanu as a threat when both of them were better people than he felt in that moment. "Sir," the guard said, his voice cracking. I don't know what to say. You are a good man, thank you." Keanu looked at him. "We're all just trying to get through the night, right? Don't worry about it." Seriously, he looked at the manager, then back at the hotel entrance. The lights were bright, the marble was shining, and everything looked perfect. But out here on the sidewalk, with the dirt and the noise, things felt more real to him. "You know," Keanu said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a crumpled napkin. "I actually saved one of the cookies for later." He showed them the napkin. It was a small, silly thing, but it made the manager laugh. It broke the tension completely. "Next time," Keanu said, putting the napkin back in his pocket, "I'll try to wear a suit. Or maybe I'll just use the front door like a normal person." He turned to walk away, heading down the sidewalk in the opposite direction of the girl. He wasn't going back into the hotel. He was going to walk home, enjoying the night air. The manager watched him go. She looked at the guard. The guard was still standing there, looking at his hands, looking at the spot where Keanu had been sitting. "Go home," the manager said to the guard gently. "Don't worry about your job. You learned something tonight. That is more important than a rule book." "Are you sure?" the guard asked. "I'm sure," she said. "And tomorrow, find that girl. If she's still out there, you buy every cookie she has, and you tell her the hotel recommends them." The guard nodded, a small smile forming on his face for the first time all night. "I will. I promise." They both stood there for a moment, watching the tall figure in the tattered jacket disappear into the city shadows. They had thrown him out, but he had left them with something far more valuable than anything they could keep behind a velvet rope. 20 minutes had passed since the man in the tattered jacket walked away into the dark city. Inside the hotel, the air felt different. It wasn't the cool, crisp scent of air conditioning and expensive perfume anymore. It felt heavy. The lobby was quieter than usual. The staff moved slowly, casting nervous glances at the front entrance and at the security guard who was standing near the marble desk. The security guard felt like he was waiting for a bomb to go off. He kept wiping his hands on his uniform, his mind racing. He was sure his phone was going to ring any second with a call from HR telling him he was fired. He had thrown out a celebrity. He had thrown out the owner. In the world of luxury hotels, that was a crime worse than stealing. He looked at the glass doors, wishing he could run after the man, but he felt frozen to the spot. The manager was behind the counter, looking at a computer screen, but she wasn't seeing the numbers. She was seeing the look on Keanu's face when he gave away his money. She was thinking about how he had sat on a dirty bench in the cold while he could have been sitting in a heated leather chair inside. She felt a deep sense of shame, but also a strange sense of awe. She realized that in all her years of managing five-star establishments, she had forgotten what real kindness looked like. She had been so focused on the rules, on the velvet ropes, and on the appearances that she had forgotten about the people. The automatic glass doors slid open with a soft hiss. The sound made everyone in the lobby jump. The guard snapped to attention, his back straightening instinctively. The manager looked up from her desk. They both expected to see a rude guest, or maybe the police coming to talk about the incident. But it was him. Keanu walked back into the lobby. He looked exactly the same as when he left. Messy hair, scuffed boots, tired eyes. He walked slowly, his hands in his pockets. He didn't look like a man coming back to yell. He didn't look like a man coming back to demand an apology. He just looked like a man who had finished his walk and decided to come back inside. The lobby went dead silent. People sitting in the velvet chairs stopped talking. The bellhops froze. Everyone knew who he was now, or at least they knew that the security guard had made a terrible mistake. They watched to see what would happen. Would he scream? Would he fire the guard right there in front of everyone? Keanu walked past the reception desk. He didn't look at the manager. He didn't look at the guests. He walked straight up to the security guard. The guard's heart was hammering against his ribs so hard he thought it might break. He opened his mouth to speak, to beg for forgiveness, but his voice failed him. He just stood there, shaking. Keanu stopped in front of him. He looked the guard in the eyes. There was no anger there. There was no arrogance. There was just a calm, steady gaze. "Hi," Keanu said quietly. "Sir," the guard choked out. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to." "I didn't know." Keanu held up a hand to stop him. "I told you outside. It's forgotten. You were doing your job. I respect that." The guard looked like he might cry. "But I treated you like a criminal. You own this place. You could have me fired in a second." "I could," Keanu agreed, nodding slowly. "But firing you wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't make me feel better, and it wouldn't help you feed your family. We all have bad moments. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next." He reached into his jacket pocket. The guard flinched, thinking Keanu might be pulling out a phone to call someone. Instead, Keanu pulled out a white paper napkin. It was folded into a little square. He carefully unfolded it. Inside was the chocolate chip cookie the girl had given him. It was slightly broken from the walk, but it was still there. "This is a really good cookie," Keanu said. He broke the cookie into 3 pieces. He handed the largest piece to the guard. He handed the second piece to the manager, who had walked over from the desk, unable to stay away. He kept the smallest piece for himself. "The girl who gave this to me," Keanu said, looking around the quiet lobby. "She is going to be a nurse. She is going to save lives." She was sitting outside, crying, because she couldn't pay for her school. But she still gave me this cookie for free because she thought I needed it. He took a bite of his small piece, chewing slowly. "She has more class in her little finger than this whole lobby has right now. And she has more heart than most people I meet." The room was so silent you could hear the hum of the refrigerator behind the bar. The guests were listening. The staff was listening. The guard looked down at the piece of cookie in his hand. It was warm and sweet. It felt like the most important thing he had ever been given. "Don't be so quick to judge people," Keanu continued, his voice soft but carrying across the room. "The guy in the dirty jacket might be the one who owns the building. The girl crying on the bench might be the hero of tomorrow. Everyone is fighting a battle we know nothing about. Just try to be kind, that's all." He didn't wait for applause. He didn't wait for a thank you. He popped the last of the cookie into his mouth and nodded at the guard. "Have a good night," Keanu said. "And seriously, the cookie is great." He turned and walked toward the elevators. He didn't go to the VIP lounge this time. He just pressed the button for the parking garage. The elevator doors opened, and he stepped inside. As the doors closed, he gave a small, tired wave to the room full of people staring at him. The lobby stayed silent for a long time after the elevator disappeared. The guard looked at the cookie in his hand, then at the manager. The manager had tears running down her face, but she was smiling. She took a bite of her piece of cookie. It was delicious. "You're not fired," the manager said to the guard, her voice strong and clear. "But you are going to remember this night for the rest of your life, and tomorrow we are going to find that girl. We are going to pay for her nursing school, every cent. Do you understand?" The guard nodded, wiping his eyes. "Yes, ma'am, I understand." He looked at the piece of cookie in his hand. He wasn't just a security guard anymore, and this wasn't just a hotel. Something had changed in the walls of the building. The luxury wasn't in the gold or the glass. The real luxury was the grace of a man who got thrown out into the cold but came back in to warm their hearts. The guard put the cookie in his pocket, saving it for later. He stood up straighter, looking at the glass doors. The next time someone walked in who looked a little rough, he knew exactly what he was going to do. He was going to smile, hold the door open, and ask them how their day was. Because you never know who is standing on the other side of the door. You never know when you might be meeting a hero.